Well, welcome to OmniFocus Workflows with Jason Atwood, and really excited to have Jason here today, all the way from New York City. And what really drew my attention in Jason's case, beyond his very long experience with OmniFocus and GTD, is his entire company is using OmniFocus. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But before we get to that, I just wanted to welcome you to OmniFocus, Learn OmniFocus. This is a site I formed back in June of 2014, just through observations of how much of an interest there was around OmniFocus in general. And prior to that, I'd been doing consulting for several years, and realized I was saying some of the same things over and over again, and there was no way I could keep up with the demand on a one-on-one basis. And while I continue to do the one-on-one consulting, it's also great to have formed a community around this. So the reason really for creating Learn OmniFocus was and still is to support people in living a fulfilling and productive life, with OmniFocus being one of the key tools. And it's, in a sense, not just about learning OmniFocus. It's much more than that. It's about developing a strategy for going through life, sensitivity to what's working and what's not working. So there's many layers to this. And what I think really helps Learn OmniFocus to work is we're on this productivity journey together, and we have one thing in common, or maybe more things, but at least one thing in common is we're all using that same core tool in OmniFocus. So there's been people from all over the world who've joined. I think I'm up at around 81 at the last count. So there's definitely a very global presence here on Learn OmniFocus, and we have some people here today from Canada and the US and Europe, and I'm sure many more of you will be watching this recording. So the Learn OmniFocus Live, which is the session that we're on today, has a few different components. Just want to take a moment to go through those. So there's this concept of theme sessions. So these are sessions that rotate around using OmniFocus in a specific context, like going through your day or traveling, or maybe managing the big picture of your life. I've done a couple to really get familiar with the basics and the best practices, and others that go into more depth on things like custom perspectives. So there's been many of these in the past, and there's many more to come, and these are a great way to learn OmniFocus and learn how to use it in many different situations. And then we have ones like we have today, as this is where a workflow guest comes on and talks about their setup and workflows and their journey through productivity. And again, this isn't just about learning OmniFocus, it's about learning how different people approach productivity and the sometimes demanding elements of life. So really looking forward to hearing what Jason has to say today. There's also the office hours, so you might learn some things watching the videos and reading the articles and coming to these sessions, but then maybe get a little bit stuck when you actually try to apply it to your own life and work, and this is where office hours come in. So these are small video conference sessions. There's a maximum of 10 people, and unlike the other two types of sessions, everything is kept confidential and nothing is recorded. So these are really meant to be an opportunity to walk through some of your own challenges and get to meet some other OmniFocus users. And if you haven't tried out one of these yet, I highly recommend checking them out. They're a lot of fun, and people go away with not just some new knowledge, but I think a real motivation to take their OmniFocus setup and productivity to the next level. And as I mentioned, I continue to do private consulting. I absolutely love this work, and I've had the opportunity to work with people all over the world from many different cultures and professions and backgrounds. So if that's something you're interested in, you can go to learnomnifocus.com/private and learn more about how that works. And before I introduce Jason, just wanted to talk about a few things that are coming up over the next couple of months. First of all, the next live session is going to be on October 30th. And this one's called Taming Your Email Using OmniFocus 3. And this is an update to one I did several years ago. And certainly the capabilities of OmniFocus and and complementary apps have come quite a long way since then. So we're going to be getting into best practices. It would be a good opportunity to just kind of give some thought as to what purpose email serves in your life, how OmniFocus can be used to help take off some of that weight, to help you keep more organized, be more methodical around using email. So I'm really looking forward to that one on October 30th. That'll be from 10 to 11 Pacific Daylight Time. And if you're joining from Europe, we change our clocks a little later than you do. So pay careful attention to the time in your location. And one that I just announced the other day is a return visit from our friend Joe Bulig. And he was here, I think it was in 2015. He's had a lot of experience with OmniFocus, has some very interesting approaches to using this tool. So I'm very happy to have him back. That'll be on November 20th, 2019, and that'll be from 10 to 11 Pacific Standard Time. I definitely recommend checking out his website in the meantime, joebulig.com. And you can also, he's got a great podcast called Bookworms with Mike Schmitz, and they take a new book every couple of weeks, a lot of them with a productivity theme, and give their impressions. They talk about how they apply it to their life and so forth. So it's a really, really great series. And the Learn OmniFocus office hours, there's currently space in the next 5 ones that are open for registration. So there's one later this month, September 25th. There's 2 in October and 2 in November. And I stagger the time, so hopefully you'll be able to find at least one of those that works for you. Okay, and without further ado, I'm happy to introduce Jason Atwood. And I first learned of Jason when I heard him interviewed by David Allen on the Getting Things Done podcast, and was really intrigued by his GTD journey, and in particular how he's actually using it within a corporate setting. And as I mentioned earlier, everyone in his company is trained in GTD. They're trained in OmniFocus, and this creates a common tool set and a common language that I think can be extremely productive. So we're going to be delving into that. Jason was also recently featured on the Inside OmniFocus website, which is one of the ones that the Omni Group put together. So definitely recommend checking out that article. And he's the co-founder of Arkus Incorporated, which is a consulting company specializing in Salesforce that's based in New York City. And he's also the co-host of a podcast called Cloud Focus Weekly that covers the latest cloud computing news, and definitely with lots of emphasis on Salesforce as well. Okay, and so without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Jason.
So I was going to do kind of a couple things. I know the thing that makes me maybe a little unique, and Tim did a great job. Again, he wrote up this, we did a little, pre-conversation, and he sent over, hey, what do you think about this as your bio? And I was like, I read it, and I actually forwarded it to my wife. I'm like, Tim has to write my eulogy, because what he said in that bio write-up was so nice and so concise. I was like, this is great. I want him to follow me around as my hype man. So I appreciate it, and thanks for asking me to be on. I'm happy to share alike. So I think the thing that pretty much gets, a lot of people have used OmniFocus for a long time. A lot of people are GTD people. The thing that gets me, or has, again, maybe it's intrigued a few people, I want to talk about a little bit, just kind of the setup of it and how we use it. And then I'll kind of flip over and show you how I use OmniFocus. So I'm just going to start off sort of as a company. So as Tim said, I am a CEO and co-founder of Arkus. We're a Salesforce consulting shop. So you got that 100%. It's great. Most people mess that up. And when we started, we were all GTD people. In fact, the 3 founders used GTD and were part of using it for our lives. And so it just made the sense to kind of build it into the company, right? So as we hired on a person or 2 people or 3 people, we started off by saying, hey, you should maybe read this book. And then eventually turned into, well, maybe you should definitely read this book. And as the tool set grew, we started off by allowing people to kind of use a tool, or maybe they'd use, Evernote, or they'd use Wunderlist, they'd use something. And eventually we just realized that it wasn't really working, like to have everybody using a different tool set. And so we kind of like now bring that into sort of how you would use the same, customer relationship management software. It wouldn't work if an entire company uses a different customer relationship management software, right? Because the whole point is so you can see each other's contacts, see each other's leads and sales and report. Or how about if you had 4 accountants and all of them use different accounting software, right? That really wouldn't work very well. So we said, we're going to do the same thing with OmniFocus, with a task management solution. So now we've grown over 9+ years. We're about 35 people, 35, 36, I think. Let's round up to 40. No, it's about 36. And one of the things as part of everybody's onboarding to Arkus, we have a sort of an onboarding program we built. It's actually rather large, but one part of it, a whole section of it, is about GTD and productivity. And one of the things that they get sort of in, as you walk in, you get your email, you get your license to Salesforce, you get your license to Gmail, you get GoToMeeting, which is our thing of choice, and you also get OmniFocus. You get that as one of your licenses, and we give everybody actually OmniFocus Pro, because I'm on Pro and I couldn't survive without it. So everybody gets Pro. And then as part of your onboarding, you get trained on it. Not only are you reading the book, is one of the books that are sort of required reading for joining Arkus, but it is also you meet with me and you talk to other people. So we have a lot of shadowing and kind of collaboration around the tool at the company. So everybody's using the tool, everybody's using OmniFocus. And Tim and I were discussing this in the beginning, and it does sound strange, and I guess maybe it is strange to everybody, because why would you do that? And really the reason is because it creates a shared language. And just like if everybody were using a different email client, right? And I said, hey, could you email me? And they're like, well, how do I do that? Or how do I reply? And email may be a bad example because everybody knows how to email. But if everybody used different tools, then it's harder for them to collaborate and help each other and to build a common language of support and documentation. And so for us, it's very important to have everybody use the same tool, because then we can all talk in the same language. I used an example the other day today, someone sent me an email. I won't call out the person. And just to let you know, when I show you my OmniFocus, I did spend some time scrubbing it, because I was like, oh, this is going to be recorded. So I took out everybody's names. There's no real names. There's no real anything in there. But this person emailed me today, and there's something that's kind of slipped through the cracks, let's say. And so instead of saying, don't let that slip through the cracks, or, bad employee, I just said, hey, build a repeating project in OmniFocus and have that repeat weekly to check that thing, to make sure that crack, that thing doesn't slip through ever again. And so that's sort of where we really enjoy that, is not only can I help somebody by saying, here's where I think you're kind of missing the point, or maybe something's going wrong, but also here's the solution on how to fix it. Oh, and here's how to do it in that tool that you already have installed on your desktop, right? So I don't have to say well, you should capture it in your system. I can say, you need to put it in OmniFocus, you need to put repeating, and you need to put it by week. Click that button. It also means we can do things like workshops and shared environments, and so we all talk to the same thing. We have work, we do internal we do this internally a lot, actually, where we'll talk and have, I'll do Ask Me Anythings. I'll do, let me show you the top 5, new things coming in OmniFocus 3. Let me show you how I use my other capture devices. So we'll really just use that as a way of internally training. So that's really the main point, and why we have standardized on one application for our task management.
Do you find that people are also using it in personal areas of life as well, since they get into the habit of using it at work?
That's probably the third most asked question. So what I find is that where OmniFocus, it is kind of a requirement at Arkus, but I can't force people to use a tool, right? I guess I can't really force anybody to do anything, except for do their job. But so where I see people really adapt or adopt OmniFocus to the best of their ability is when they bring it into their personal, right? If you are going to talk about, if we go back to GTD principles, if you're going to talk about a trusted system, well, if your trusted system is, 3 different systems, you always have that hesitancy of when you go to capture something, like, what system do I capture it in? So I always say to people, first of all, when you sign up for your OmniSync license, use your personal email. I don't care. Like, that data, that OmniFocus data is yours. And when you leave Arkus, if you leave Arkus, I always make the joke, like when in 100 years, when you leave Arkus, you take the data with you, right? So I have no access to it. I don't want to see it. You can put in anything you want personally. I want them to use it for personal. So I think the people who get it the most absolutely put their personal in it. And then they trust that, if they were to leave, they could just change the thing and sync it up with whatever device they want. And they could get the data back. So again, it's not, while the tool is something I'm giving them the license to the tool, or not giving, but providing the license to the tool, I'm not in control of the data, and I don't really care. It's not, and that's the second question is how do you break the difference between something that's a personal productivity tool to a corporate tool, right? So like email's corporate, so we all kind of can see it, and there's compliance and calendars. I can see other people's calendars, and certainly Salesforce is a collaborative environment. We really consider OmniFocus your trusted system. It's yours, an extension of you as an individual. And it's how I use it, right? No one else goes into my OmniFocus. Like I don't give my OmniFocus, I have an iPad here in front of me, so I'm like reaching towards it. I don't give OmniFocus to my wife and be like, hey, look, capture some tasks for me, right? OmniFocus is very personal to me. It's my tool, it's my trusted system. And so when I train people on it, that's how I train them. I'm like, this is your trusted system. This is where all of your thoughts and stuff need to go. And this is where you're going to organize it. So to be effective, really, it should be your personal stuff as well. And so I always say, please put your personal stuff in there. I'll show you how I break out my personal from my Arkus in my example. But yes, so people are encouraged to do that. Whether they do it or not, I actually don't know because I'm not in their OmniFocus. I mean, I know the ones that really that get into GTD and OmniFocus, they talk about it and they say absolutely. My favorite is when they get their partner to jump on board. So I've had more than a few of my employees become big GTD people, become big OmniFocus people, and then they get their wife or spouse or whatever a license as well. And that's when I know, like, oh, I've win. It's a win for me.
One other side question, and you might already be planning to talk about this a bit later, but as you know, the collaboration features are coming to OmniFocus. Is that something that not having those has been limiting it at all, or is it something you're really looking forward to, or is it kind of somewhere in between that spectrum?
It's funny because I just tweeted at Ken 2 days ago, said, hey, where's that feature that, or maybe it was on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, where's that feature that you said was going to be out a year ago? It's kind of interesting, but since we don't do collaboration through OmniFocus, in some ways, I don't really care. I'm interested to see how it's going to work, right? Basically, for those who don't know, but anyway, there's a feature coming that they've been talking about for literally years that you'll be able to send a task to somebody else, and then it will connect to your task. So they'll be connected. So if you were to you check it off as done in your task system, it'll then check off on their task system. So it's kind of the first breakthrough for OmniFocus to go into more of a collaborative environment. So I'm kind of excited about it because I want to see how it works. But again, since I sort of train people and build OmniFocus to be so personal and your system, I don't really care. Like it will be interesting to see. I don't know if we'll even adapt it, but I could see some use cases where it might be interesting. But I don't know if it would be something that I'll just jump all over. I mean, I have had people send me back screenshots of their OmniFocus to prove that they've captured something. So maybe that'd be a replacement for that functionality, because that's a lot. I'll be like, did you capture it? And then I'll get like a Slack message with a screenshot of their OmniFocus with it captured in there. So kind of fun. So first of all, one of the things that, and I'm going to do two things. I'm going to show you how I use OmniFocus, but I'm also going to give some sort of like tips and tricks from my 13-decade-long process of using OmniFocus. Certainly, I'm also on a beta version, of course, because I can't not have beta. I always have to have a beta version. So the first thing I really talk to when I help people set up OmniFocus is really about minimalism. And I actually follow this through on almost all my applications on my desktop, for whether it's Mail or Safari or anything I use. One of the things I champion and try to get people to do is to remove a lot of the buttons and remove a lot of the sort of, the stuff that's up there. And people always ask, well, why do you do that? Like, what's the point? I like my buttons. It's like, well, because what happens is if you have a lot of buttons up there, it's a distraction, right? There's just stuff that you're looking at. I'm not focused on what I should be focused on. But B, it stops you from learning the key commands. So when I train people on OmniFocus, I say you have to learn the key commands. If you're not learning the key commands, it's not, you're going to slow yourself down. And really GTD and using this tool is really about the speed to enter. If there's anything that's stopping you from capturing something, then you're not going to capture it, right? So if you have 10 thoughts and it's going to take you an hour and a half to write down those 10 thoughts, you're not going to write down all 10 thoughts. But if you have 10 thoughts and it's taking you 20 seconds to write down all 10 thoughts, you're going to write them down, right? It's easier. So I say remove all of the buttons. So you can obviously just right-click, customize toolbar, and you can just pull them all off. I only leave the sync icon up there, and the reason I leave the sync icon up there is the ability just so I can see that it's happening, right? So it'll you'll see it move around or not. So then I'll leave that up there. But everything else I actually just remove, and I just replace with an absolute with a big nothingness up there. So that's the first thing I do is a setup. So that way, when I'm looking at OmniFocus, I'm really, really focused in on what I'm doing, right? I'm not paying attention to other things. So I leave my inbox very clean and, whatever. The second thing is, so I do break things down by folder. So I'm going to skip through my, my perspectives. I have a ton of perspectives. I only make these available. And obviously you guys know this because you're OmniFocus people, but you can make sure when you look at perspectives, right, you can only show a couple here if you want. So the ones on the side, if you star them, they'll show up on your side. So some people have a lot of this going on, but I choose not to. And because I want to A, remember the key commands, and B, I just don't really need all that in my face all the time, especially for perspectives I only use once a week or so. So there's no really point to me having them up there. You see, I customize mine so I can go through them very quickly. So everything is a key command. So I can get through my perspectives as kind of like a flow. Forecast, Arkus, home, projects. I don't go to my inbox that often because things get processed out of it very quickly. So it's kind of like tip 2. So let's just look at the big projects first to start. I'm going to I'll close out everything and then I'll come back. Okay, so how do I organize my, my life in OmniFocus? Obviously just folders. I use folders as my horizons of my roles and my responsibilities and sort of like the things that I'm focused on. A couple things I train people on. I say don't go too deep in folders. I think I have one that goes 3 deep, but that's about it. I also tell people that when you have more than 20 in a list, that's about the time you need to be thinking about putting into a separate folder. And that's because your ability to read and look at a list of things and kind of understand that list stops getting effective after about 20. So if you're scanning through a list of 20, you can kind of like keep it all in your head, but it's like when you get to that, if you get to 30, you kind of like don't remember number 1. So it's just its ability to kind of scan and quickly look at data. I suggest that people break them down. So I have a folder for Arkus, I have a folder for finances, health, friends and family, fun and travel, right? That I look at and then I do a miscellaneous single action list, leave that at the top, right? This is where I just throw random tasks, right? So I keep it at the top level. I don't keep a lot of projects at the top level, but I keep this one at top level as a way of just throwing a random thing. These are one-off things, one-off tasks, things that I can just quickly, send in there without having to think about them, right? Wishing Sally a happy 40th birthday tomorrow. I don't need a project for that, right? It's just a one-off. They're turning 40. I wanted to remember it, so I captured this days ago, and so I set that up. The other thing I do too that's a little custom is I don't use a lot of the columns. You notice that like when you're looking at mine, it's like, oh, you only have a couple columns. I don't use a lot of columns. I've customized it in preferences to say really only use these columns because I don't for every single view I don't need to have tons and tons and tons of columns. I rarely use flagged. In fact, I don't use flagged because I don't need to, and I don't need to see all the different columns all the time. It gets kind of much. So again, you'll see most of my stuff is about minimalizing, not maximizing the amount of stuff that you can see. So I always keep this at the top, just a miscellaneous at the top. Then under, let's break these down. There we go. So then under my Arkus folder here, right? So I have a couple different folders that are underneath. And really what I use these for are, breaking out certain stuff. So, I'm working on 5 different clients. No, these are not our actual clients. I just had to change the names because they can't show up somewhere. I have a prospect here who I'm working on, so I'll throw a prospect folder. So the way I handle, client work is, and people ask, well, what happens if you're doing 2 projects for Tesla? I'd be lucky, but I'm not. I just use a project for them. I just have someplace, because again, this is not where all the project work is doing. This is not where we're capturing it all in Salesforce. Salesforce has the whole project management, deliverables, and time entries, and all that. Custom, we built that out for ourselves, 10 years ago, 9 years ago. This is just where I capture, waiting fors. I capture a quick waiting for, or I capture a quick thing I need to do next week for that. So that's what I train people. It's like, you don't need to put everything into this. It doesn't have to be this series of long sort of tasks. It just has to be the place where you capture that thing to remind you to do that thing on that day, or that you need to follow up with somebody. Or if you get the email and you want to respond to it, you can just, quickly capture the task using the quick entry, and just capture it, throw it to the project. So there's always a project for every client that I'm personally working with. These are not all the clients of Arkus. We have, I think 450 clients. These are just the ones I'm personally engaged with right now, the ones that I'm dealing with. So I put them in a folder. And then if I have any prospects that I'm working on, I put them in a folder too. Again, this also helps me when I come through a weekly review. I can go through here and go, hey, is there anything I owe McDonald's or Hyatt or Tesla or Apple this week? So it kind of gets reminding me to think about that. If there's any that I have engagement on, right? So this is where I'm a senior person on, I'll put it up there. I'm currently engagement manager on, I think, 30 or so projects that are ongoing right now. But again, I'm not going to put those all in OmniFocus. Because there's a system for that. That's somewhere else. This is just if one where I need to actually do some follow-up stuff on, I would build a quick project, keep it in OmniFocus, and then I would throw some tasks against it to keep me, keep it on point. And then when I was done with those tasks, I would just mark the project as done. One of my philosophies too on OmniFocus is, and this is kind of strange coming from a huge OmniFocus person, everything in here is sort of destructible, right? I don't go back to OmniFocus for history. I don't read through my notes on OmniFocus, right? I think of it as very like what's ahead of me, and I don't really look in the past. I don't go back. I use other places to look in the past. Right, so if I want to capture documents, capture those PDF, put them in Dropbox. If I want to capture, things that are, a top 10 list of Prince songs, I'll put that in Evernote. OmniFocus is about functionally what I'm doing and where I'm going. It's not a long-term storage. So in theory, if you deleted my OmniFocus file, which would kill me, but if you did it, I would be fine. I'd just go right back and rebuild all the projects. It wouldn't really, it's not like I'd lose anything on a long-term process. So kind of keep that. And then, I do keep a project for every one of my employees. Again, names have been changed to protect the not so innocent, but I keep a project. And it's not that I'm trying to complete them. I'm not trying to make them done, right? I'm not trying to get my Kate Smith here done, but it allows me to capture the follow-ups and the waiting fors quickly and easily. And if I need to talk to somebody, this is a very common thing to throw, I don't really have a boss. I guess my clients are my bosses. But if I had a direct manager, when I did, I definitely had a project for that person, right? And because they're in my cycle, I need to think about them. And if I need to wait for something from them, they need to sign me a document, I capture that. Or if I need to talk to them about something, I'll throw that against them. So that's why I have the employees listed out and why I capture them. And then the bottom is just a bunch. These are more of like real projects. In fact, including one like here, right? Here's an actual one. I left this undone, right? So when we started talking about this project, and as soon as I sort of made the commitment, I threw it in OmniFocus, right? And I just put it in as a project. I actually deferred it for a while because I think we talked about this back in June, and I deferred it out. You can see the deferred date was September 3rd. That's kind of when I had it pop back into my life. So the other thing I would say is one of the things that I always train people on is sort of a setup thing is I don't know why they have this happen, but I only tell people to only look at available. Do not, when you're setting up your OmniFocus, because if you're looking at remaining, and I'm going to do this for a second, watch everybody's head explode. Yes, that's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of projects, right? So I only want to see what's ahead of me. These are things that are not, they're not blocked, they're not deferred, they're not on hold. So they're only the things that are active. When I pay attention to these things, there's hundreds of projects that I have pending. I have another 150. I think I did the math the other day. I have maybe 200 that are on hold. But I don't want to look at those all the time because those are part of a different cycle, part of a weekly review. So one of the things that I tell everybody is all of your perspectives go in and make sure that you're only looking at available for the main perspective. So when I do home and all, so these home, Arkus, and projects are only showing available. So I'm only looking at the things that are important. That way I can also defer things out very easily. So I have a couple projects here, right? So that's sort of my Arkus life. And then I built a perspective that I could zoom in on it, right? So this is just my ability to zoom in on, again, for me, it's Command 2 gets me to my Arkus perspective. And this is just if I want to look at all Arkus. I don't want to pay attention to my home. I don't want to, I don't want to do anything there. I just want to look at what's in my Arkus world for today. So then secondary, there's another one for home. And home is just really looking at the three, the three projects that are, or the projects that are under those other folders. So again, what this allows me to do is jump between the two different kind of worlds. This is a little bit how to do, work-life balance. It's all in my brain and it's all part of my life. I do separate them out a little bit. So if on a Saturday I just want to look at my home stuff, I could hit Command 3 and I'm at my home perspective. That just shows me any project that's in these folders that's available. Again, there's hundreds of projects that are not available, that are pending or hold, but these are the ones that are available in these folders and allows me to kind of take things, including, change up the, I spelled something wrong because I was doing this all before to make sure it was anonymous. So here's, fun projects. These are all the ones that are just on, I have a lot of repeating projects. This is one of my favorites. People like, why would you have a water pick and floss teeth for project? Well, because it was a habit that I just didn't build very well. I needed to build it better. So I use OmniFocus repeating, and I think it's probably, actually, you did make a call out. So we did a podcast, I think, over the summer called Why OmniFocus. And one of the main things that we talked about is like the top 5 reasons why I think OmniFocus is heads and shoulders above any other application I've ever seen is their repeating. They can do repeating like nobody else. And those projects are repeating. So this one, for example, if I'll just show all the things, right? So this is a project to help build my habit of flossing my teeth. I wasn't doing a good job of it. So I built this project and it just repeats every 2 days. It pops up and it just gets me, it gets me to do it. And there's also a nice feeling of doing this, of going, what? I did this. I actually did this before this meeting, so I feel good saying, okay, right? And then when I'm done, what OmniFocus does is it goes away, it creates the next one, and then if I jump out and jump back to this view, let's go to Arkus and come back to home, it's gone. That's right, it's gone, right? That project's gone, and it's gonna pop up in 2 days, and it's gonna remind me to do it again. So yes, do I remember to water pick my teeth? Sure, but I like this for building habits. And I have a lot of these. I have a daily health one. I have a water picking one. Some are daily, a couple are daily. The number one that I think everybody, obviously in this world, if you're in the GTD world, your weekly review, right? You have a weekly review project that repeats every single week, right? And it helps build that habit. So it shows up and it's like, hey guys, you gotta do your weekly review. Here's a series of steps that you can do to do that.
One that came up from Francesco, he says, problem is that with active projects, you hide also unavailable actions like waiting for ones. And he's wondering how you handle this. So how do you keep waiting items visible, assuming you make those on hold or inactive?
Yeah, so you can do that with a perspective. So I'm just doing Command Shift W, right? Because again, everything's a thing. And here's all my things that I'm waiting for. I keep all the waiting fors on in that way. So I keep it as a perspective, and this just shows me everything that I'm waiting for by project. You can do this in a perspective. So that's what I would do. Is like if you want to review that, then you do it in perspective. Also, there's 2 ways I do waiting fors. You can see here's a lot of things that are the waiting fors. I do two ways of waiting fors. One is I do sort of a non-date based waiting for. That's where I'll just throw a waiting for. And let's say, I'm trying to think of, a friend wants to borrow my lawnmower. I don't have a lawnmower, but let's say a friend wants to borrow my lawnmower. And I say, sure, you can borrow my lawnmower. I might throw a waiting for in my miscellaneous, friend to contact you about your lawnmower. But I basically don't care, right? I'm not forcing them or going to chase them around. Hey, you said you want to borrow my lawnmower. I might just do it as a waiting for. I'm not time dating it. The other way to do it is to throw a date on it. So I do a waiting for, and I put the due date of when I need to have that back. So if I say, hey, let's see, one of my fake employees, hey, Kate, can you please get that paper signed, get the TPS reports to me by Friday? Then I throw a waiting for on Friday, right? TPS reports, Kate, waiting, Friday. And that means, and here's, because this will show up, it'll show up in your forecast view. It doesn't matter what the project view is, it'll show up in your forecast view. You click on your forecast view and you're like, oh, wait, Kate was supposed to fill out that TPS report. And that's when you contact Kate and you say, hey, Kate, where's the TPS report?
So if you put a due date on waiting, is that kind of a signal that if you're still waiting on that date, there's something that needs to be done?
Yeah, because then it's going to pop in my system to say, you're waiting for something. And then I go talk to them. Then that's my indicator of hey, well, there's two things. If it shows up on Friday and I got them on Wednesday, then I just click it off. Click, got it, right? They already gave it to me. But if I haven't got it by Friday, then I go, oh, time to contact Kate. That's generally then it's 2-minute rule, flip over to email, find search for Kate and reply to the email that I sent asking for that thing and say, hey, Kate, where's the TPS report you said you were going to get to me on Friday? One thing, just throwing this back to working in a collaborative environment with everybody using OmniFocus, one thing that's interesting is that if you get to an environment where everybody is trained on productivity, is trained on GTD, and uses OmniFocus, you can get to an environment where the expectation level of capturing and following up and being on top of your stuff, you can raise it up. I mean, I don't know if everybody here, there's a whole bunch of you, but you probably work in environments or work with people that you have those people in your company that never answer emails, and you have that people in your company who don't respond to things, and that you have to ask them 5 times to do things. One of the reasons that we train people in GTD and productivity and make it part of our core and make it actually part of our why, and give them OmniFocus is because we don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have somebody who is the person who always forgets things or doesn't capture things or doesn't write things down and always overpromises and never delivers. So what I want to do is create an environment where everybody has the tool set to do that, but also has the philosophy behind it. Why do you capture things? So you don't miss your commitments, so you don't feel bad, so you don't procrastinate. So all those things that are sort of, the bad things, you don't have to do that. I mean, it would be a great world if you never had to have a waiting for, right? In a perfect world, why would you don't need waiting fors, right? You say, hey, Bob, can you borrow my lawnmower? Sure, I'll send it over tomorrow. Next day, Bob shows up with the lawnmower. You would never have to, because everybody would be super on top of it. But the reality is that's not the rest of the world. And that's also why OmniFocus is so powerful from us just a singular. It doesn't matter if everybody uses OmniFocus. I worked at a corporation, one of the world's largest corporations, and I use OmniFocus by myself, but it still made me more productive. Everybody else, well, they were as bad as you can imagine in a megacorp.
So it sounds like you're essentially redefining what normal is within Arkus, which is quite different from the normal at other companies. So it's normal to get back to people when you say you are, and to and it comes build a culture around that.
There's more to do it than just OmniFocus. We train people on how to do email. We train people on on other productivity things, how to actually maintain focus, and there's all sorts of stuff that I think is missing from the corporate world in terms of people don't train people on productivity. They don't train people on how to handle their email and how to do it well, or even calendar management. We train people on calendar management internally, how to handle it, how to send good meeting requests, what to do, because it's not something that's just in the normal world. But we find it makes them better. And obviously, since we're consultants and we're interacting with these clients, we need to be on our game, right? We need to be as good as we could possibly be, and this is how we do that.
Yeah, awesome. That makes a lot of sense. As a question from Eric, and I have this question myself as well too. So he says, I see tags like internet, Google, etc.
Yep.
Do you operate from a tags perspectives at all in a typical kind of GTD fashion, like looking at next actions, or do you tend to be working more at this project level?
So yeah, for tags, again, I'm such an old OmniFocus user, like it's hard for me not to say context. So tags, for me, I'm still a little old school. Like I use tags kind of like you would use on like context, right? When I'm capturing things, I make it as a requirement. Well, I didn't hear, but I should have. That's a bad one. Look, that's a missing tag. What? That's terrible. But I'll throw it in, and the way I explain it, I think there's two ways I think about context and tags, both in GTD terms and in OmniFocus terms. That is really like kind of how I use them and how I kind of think about them, right? In the world of using a phone or computer or internet or whatever, obviously everything is everything now, right? I've got 6 devices on my desk here that can all do the same thing. And so there are some things like home and office, like I can't take out the garbage at home when I'm in the office. So there's certain things like that. I don't do a lot of like thinking about, hard tasks or how long it's going to do those things. What I do is I think of tags as 2 things. One, as when I'm capturing, it's a way for me to think to clarify a little bit more about the task, right? So I'm writing, write up the document. Okay, that's the task. Where's it going? Oh, it's going to a project. Oh, to the McDonald's project. Oh, okay. Where are you doing that? So what it does is it makes me think a little bit more about that task. It makes me kind of define it a little bit more. So I'm kind of like capturing and clarifying at the exact same time by putting on that tag of, Docs or Google or Word, because it just says, oh, that's where I'm going to do it. So it helps me kind of future think about where I'm going to do that work. So that's one way I use it. The second way to use it is really the way that it's kind of the thing that OmniFocus brings that, again, most of these task management tools don't bring, is incredible filtering, right? Show me only the things I can do right now. I'm getting on a plane tonight, actually in a couple hours. And I have an airplane, perspective because, go-go Wi-Fi is not great all the time. And so it's just show me things I can do. Like, don't show me things I can't do right now because it's useless. Just show me things I can do. Give me a filtered list of the things I can do. So a perspective like errands on your mobile device is great because just show me the 3 or 4 things I can do right now. I don't want to see a list of the calls I can't make. I don't want to see taking out the composting at home because I'm not at home. I just want to see the things I can do. So I think context like that, it's very useful because it can give you a better filtered view of what you need to do.
So if you were on the airplane, would you be going into your airplane tag and pulling up that list, or would it be more a list of projects that is filtered by airplane?
So I think it's just a perspective that says airplane. It just shows me, I think it's like all projects, it's all tags that are basically not online, right? So it's like things that are anywhere, things that are, it's a collection, it's a view into things that I can't do. So I don't tag things airplane. I just have a perspective that I can view all tasks that basically I don't have internet for. And I could name it, top of the mountain as well. It's a way for me just to look at things that I can only do on an airplane because I'm captured. I don't have internet. Nowadays,
okay. So it's really applying the criteria
that's right.
That produces a list that's useful to have on an airplane.
Right, so let's see what I have in here. Right, so there you go. Right, first available, any, has a tag on hold, untagged. Let's see, okay, and I have 11 tags. So it's basically just saying, hey, any of these 11 tags, these are the ones that I can do on an airplane. That make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And are you adding multiple tags in some cases, or do you tend to stick with one?
I'm sort of still kind of a pretty purist, so I know I can add multiple tags. I know it's the feature that everybody asked for 10 years. I just don't do it. Sometimes I'll use the today tag. I like that feature. You can have a tag that shows up in your forecast view as today, and it kind of flips. I'll use that once in a while. But really, again, the way that I probably discussed back on the forums when they were asking for it 8 years ago was, listen, one of the things about GTD is that capturing, and I said this before, you have to be sure you don't put barriers to capture, right? That's why I can talk to my watch and capture. I can talk to my devices. I can quick entry with, bam, open up this thing and quick entry right in, like anywhere on my desktop. You don't want barriers, because barriers mean you don't capture it. Then you find yourself, with the things just running around your head because you're not willing to get it out of your head because it takes effort. So the thing about multiple tagging is, do you want to spend your time capturing a little simple device like, oh, go get milk, tag, errands, tag, fun, tag, shopping, tag, things my wife asked me to do, tag, today. Aren't you just creating more more time to capture something than the value you're going to get out of it? Again, I don't look back to this and go, oh, show me the millions of tags I have. I don't need statistics on it right? So I'm looking at just as a way to get it out of my head quickly. And so I'm not multi-tagging because it's not bringing more value to me, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. And how about defer dates? I know you mentioned the example of our session here and deferring that off. Will you kind of schedule things by deferring them, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. So let me show you. So you're looking you're like, this is the simplest OmniFocus I've ever seen in my life. There's I'm looking at my sort of projects view. One of the things that this is like one of my pro tips. So I use this number, and I think I tweeted this a couple times. See this 23? It's not real because I've taken some things out of here. So you see I have 23 active projects. I actually use that number, that active project, as a barometer for the level of commitments I have. So I have a lot of projects that are in here that are on hold, I think over 200. I have another 300 or so that are pending, meaning they're scheduled, they're deferred to the future. So they're either deferred out or they haven't come up yet. Meaning they're like a repeating thing. So I have ones about my wife's birthday, ones about Valentine's Day, ones about holidays, driver's license renewals, tons and tons and tons, literally hundreds. But they're not in my view because I don't want them in my view because there's no point to them. So I use this number, this projects, 23 projects, as a way of kind of judging how overwhelmed I am, or do I have too much on my plate? And this is, I think, like a super pro tip, because if you get to understand what that number means to you, for me, it's 30. 30 is the number. Anything over 30, I've got too much on my plate. Anything under 20, I'm bored. So I try to keep it between 20 and 30. And actually in my weekly review, I look at that number and try to get it down underneath 30. Yeah, it used to be 80 for me. I used to have it up at 80. I'd be like, oh, 80 is fine. 80 is overwhelming for me. So, but for yourself, you can look at that number and go, oh, what does that mean to me? If you figure out your own number, what it allows you to do is then to say no, right? Or to renegotiate a commitment. Hey, I do this all the time. I'll get that number and I'll have 35 or 40, and I'll be like, wait, I got too much on my plate, right? I can go through all my commitments in OmniFocus and go, maybe I need to not do some of these. Maybe I've committed to something that I can't do. Now, obviously, I can't uncommit to my employees. I can't uncommit to my child. But I might have called you up. If I was completely overwhelmed, I might have called you up and be like, hey, Tim, man, it's been I know this is coming up, but I'm swamped and I've got whatever it is. Can we renegotiate this? Can I do this next month or something like that? Or, whatever. Or I'll defer something out and just make a commitment, an internal commitment. And I'll say, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just let myself go for now, right? I'm not going to do it. So I use that as a way of kind of seeing where I am. And I think it's extremely powerful because I don't think everybody can look at what's on their plate in their life very easily, especially if you don't use GTD. You certainly can't.
Yeah, I think what you're really pointing to is kind of the psychological side of task management, and I've heard Kurash talk about this quite a bit as well too. Whereas long lists of things can be kind of disheartening. They can create unnecessary stress. The one thing I do hear, kind of the counter to that, is people are often concerned that they'll put something into OmniFocus and not see it, until it's, a week too late or a month too late or whatever that happens to be. So given that you're not kind of getting your eyes on a lot of the things in here regularly, what are some of the strategies you use to really maintain trust in your system?
So that's where you're going to use, I think, the most important feature. And this is actually two of my tips. So first of it is go into preferences. And again, this is what I tell everybody to do, and take this by default, review every project and make it 2 months. And the reason is, this is a great feature. I don't know if everybody should know about this, but this is a great feature of OmniFocus. When they built OmniFocus, they built in this concept that a project need to be reviewed every X, right? And there's a special perspective you can go to called review, and I'll try mine to see if it works, although I do review all my stuff. And so even if it's on hold, even if it's pending, even if it's active, it'll show up in that perspective, however many things you tell it. So it defaults to once a week. I do not think it should default to once a week. I think once a week is too much, because look at the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of projects that I have that are on hold. I do not need to go through these once a week. Some of these are things they're on hold. Well, they're on hold for a reason, because I'm not taking them in, but I don't need to look at this because it's something that might happen, that I might want to look at once every 2 months, 6 months. So I suggest putting this to 2 months. That way every project shows up at least every 2 months, and then you can adjust, right? Like I telling someone this the other day, it's like my 50th birthday, right? It's coming up, a couple years. I don't need to review that every week. That's ridiculous, right? It's maybe depressing. You review that once every 6 months maybe, and it pops up in that perspective. Again, add that into your weekly review, and then it pops up and you review it, and you go, oh, reviewed, click, and you move on. So that's one way to make sure that things get, come back to you, is by telling it when to come back to you. The second way, in a review standpoint, the second way is pending. So these are all my on hold projects. Again, hundreds. Let's just see how many total. 107 on hold projects. And then here's the ones that are pending. Let's see how many pending I have. 193 pending projects. All right, so look at all these. Right. So again, some of them are, things that I do every single year. There's Mother's Day. There's some fun stuff. There's a lot of, fun projects, things that I do every year. These are ones that are, here's a good example. Let's see. Is this a good example? Sure. Here's a dad's camping weekend. I do this every year with my daughter. It's a pending project. It shows up around May, and then, it repeats every year. So I have tons and tons of these, because it just reminds me that, I got to schedule that dad's camping weekend. But it's not going to show up until May 1st, right? Or here's one that I do all the time, water plants, right? So this isn't in my view every single day. I only need to see this, every 10 days it shows up, right? And this is where OmniFocus is extremely powerful, because you can say to repeat, but only at a certain type of repeating. Completion repeating or assigned date repeating. I don't know very many other applications that can do this kind of granularity. And again, this isn't in my view until it needs to be in my view. So on the 20th, you'll see it'll pop up, and I'll be like, I got to water the plants. And I'll wander around and water the plants behind me. And then I'll click it, and it'll be gone. And then, show up. But I don't need to review this every week. That's ridiculous. Let's look at Father's Day. Great. Oh, there's some Father's Day projects. Again, do I need to review this every week? No, I don't. So I have this set to every 4 months. Every 4 months, it pops in my review perspective, which I guess we could pull up. Let's see. Is everything in it? Oh, it does have everything in it. So this is how I think you keep things coming up, right? So here's some projects. Here's some projects that are pending. I'm going to mark that reviewed. Mark that reviewed. Mark that reviewed. Buy new running shoes. Great. A friend's wedding that I'm waiting for them to get married. I want to go to the draft this year in Vegas, right? So again, I don't need to review that weekly, but I have it pop up as often as it needs to be. That's why I think you should set that to more like 2 months, not weekly.
The projects that are active, do those get a more frequent review date? Because I know there's some that I'm actively working on. I wouldn't want to go more than a week without reviewing those, or in some cases, maybe even a few days. I want to make sure that it's kind of staying on my radar.
So no, actually, for me, it's the opposite. If they're a project that's literally something like my weekly review, do you know why I don't need to review my weekly review? Because I do my weekly review every week. So I don't need to review it because I do it. So anything that's actually really in my face all the time, that's why it's in my project list. And I'm of course going to review it because I review every project every week. And when I'm reviewing my projects during my weekly review, I'm reviewing these projects. I don't need to do the functional OmniFocus review of it. I just need, because I'm looking at it. I'm literally, as part of my weekly review, I'm going to come in here and look and scan down this list of 30 or 20 to 30 projects. And I'm going to go, okay, what do I need to do about this Learn OmniFocus episode, or this thing, or Dreamforce, or my child, or the 2019 marathon, right? Or the holiday trip. And I keep these. There's 10, 15, 20 other projects underneath that travel folder with all sorts of other projects, but I'm not thinking about those, right? Until they need to. And that's where deferred day is great, because you just push that in the future. I have projects in travel that are, one that's probably deferred till, 3 years from now. So that's sort of like using that deferred date. It's great because you can push it into the future and say, this is when I want you to pop into my view. And then I'll see it in my projects. I go, oh, great. I said I wanted to take a long weekend to Atlantic City, right? And I pushed it forward. So you can kind of use both of those things. So the review is great because it'll make sure it comes back to you at a certain point. The defer, you then get to choose when you're going to see it again, when it's going to pop into your life. So again, the example I used for yours was you handed me, this thing. And so then I was like, I captured as a project, but then I deferred it. I deferred it out like 2 months because I didn't need to do anything for 2 months. I just didn't need it. And then it popped up and I'm like, oh, right, that's coming up. I need to do something about that. So let me get it ready for it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And just kind of summarize, this is a question I get quite a bit, where the people kind of don't think the review feature is specifically for a weekly review. But I'd say the weekly review is a good time to go through all the active projects, and the review is a feature to use continuously as things pop on there.
Absolutely.
However often they need to. So
my favorite thing is on the phone. Is literally, I love that. I keep that on my phone. I keep it like as a top perspective because it's great to kind of, you're heading down the street and I just pop open that, oh, what's in here? Oh, right, this, or this. And review for me is just look at it and it doesn't need to change its state. Sometimes I'll take a review project of something that I'm reviewing and I've already done it. I'm like, oh, I did that. Great, done. And then I've done it. Or it's, you know what? Good. Don't need to think about it anymore. Review. See you in 2 months. Or it's, you know what? I need to take action. And that's a project that's on hold that I'm reviewing. Let's move that to active. Let's push that into my active world. Now it's something I need to do. So then it shows up in this view and I'm like, okay, here we go. And I'll take that on. So it's my way of kind of like, that's what I'm going to do about those things. I'm going to move it out or drop it. Like there are times I just looking through my review and I'm like, all right, you captured this 9 years ago. Really? You don't need to do this anymore. Give up. Like renegotiate the commitment with yourself.
Are some of the sort of future deferred projects aspirational, or things that you might do in the future, or you kind of want to be prompted to reconsider, or are they kind of in that realm of someday maybe, or do those sorts of things tend to live outside of OmniFocus? Yeah,
they're a mix. They're definitely mixed. There are definitely some someday maybes in there. I will say this is where I probably have it in some things I have in kind of two places. So for example, I do have a project. I use Evernote. I'm an Evernote person. I use Evernote for just notes. It's like literally just notes of things, lists. So like I have one called a bucket list, right? It's fun. I guess it's kind of, whatever. So I have a bucket list and I have a list of all these things I want to do. Some of them are like, take my kid to, or go see the World Cup. I've never seen the World Cup. So go visit the World Cup. It's a list. It's in Evernote. Sure, that also might exist in OmniFocus somewhere as well, but it doesn't, and you say, well, why would you have it in two places? Well, because you know what? It makes me feel good. I love to sometimes go look at my bucket list in Evernote and just kind of scan through it quickly to be like, oh, yeah, or I want to quickly add to it. So it really depends. I don't mind either way. OmniFocus is definitely more of an actionable thing. Like I might take something from my bucket list and like make it a project in OmniFocus because I'm like, oh, no, I'm actually going to do this now. This is going to be a thing. Like I'm actually going to go to the World Cup. Okay, great. World Cup 2026. It's actually a project in OmniFocus now. So, right, it's not anywhere near because it's obviously not come up. I have it deferred until probably, 2025, and it'll pop up. And I'll be like, all right, the World Cup's a year away. Here we go. What are we going to do? We're going to go to it. It's going to be in the States, so I think it's 2026. So it's definitely a mix. a lot of my stuff that's deferred is the repeating stuff. It's the stuff that just, it's these tasks that need to be done or these projects need to be done. And I just have them just repeating, and then they go away. They come out and I do them, and then they go away. Whether they're once a month, once a day, once a year, once every 6 years, anniversaries, like I have tons and tons of them. But it's just nice because then when I have that thought, oh crap, my 20th anniversary is coming up. I don't then have a feeling, actually don't have the oh crap moment. I have the, oh right, it's in OmniFocus. Don't worry about it. It'll come up. It's your trusted system. It will tell you when it's ready. It will show up in the right time, and you don't have to worry about it.
And I think, to me, like having anything repeating is a form of automation. It's work that you've done once, so you don't have to keep doing it over and over again. You just want it to show up on your radar when appropriate, and the rest of the time, as long as you trust the system, you're not even having to think about it.
Yep, and it's an absolute level of trust. I mean, I trust OmniFocus extremely. So when I said, you could take away my OmniFocus file and I would, I'd be fine. Yeah, I'd be fine with the 30 that I look at every day. I probably wouldn't be fine on the 200 that are on hold, or the 200 that are on hold, and the 300 that are repeating. I mean, I would figure it out. My life would go on. But it is really nice to know that when I have those thoughts about whether it's Thanksgiving or, a vacation or, an anniversary, I don't get that kind of like, oh my goodness, in the shower moment. I'm like, yeah, that's an OmniFocus. And then your brain really does learn to let it go and just give it up. And then it doesn't have to focus on it. It doesn't keep you up at night. It doesn't pop in your head.
And if it is keeping you up at night, that's a chance to say, okay, what is it about my system don't I trust? And make whatever changes are necessary. Question from Jacob, do you use the David Allen GTD system 100% in business, family, etc.? So I'd interpret that to say, are you kind of a purist when it comes to GTD, or is some of what you practice kind of your own flavor that's inspired by that?
I'm a pretty purist. I mean, I read the book in 2004. I did a calculation the other day that I think I've done 755 weekly reviews. I'm a pretty big purist. That said, I think there's as a foundation, it's an incredible productivity system, and I think it's helped me tremendously. I definitely put stuff on top of it, right? There's stuff that things I think about and things I do, and productivity things that I have, over the last 15 years come up with by myself that are, more about sort of functional things. I think that's where as a GTD purist, I'm certainly a GTD purist, I think there's a lot of missing functional things. Like functionally, how do you do X? How do you do Y? And that's where, that's where this type of stuff is helpful. And OmniFocus is helpful because you can say, it's not just like get it out of your head. It's like hit the key command, option space, open up your thing and write. Boom, you've got it out of your head. You captured it, right? It's like functionally showing you how to take this concept, which is productivity, and move it into something that's extremely functional and doable.
I'm curious if other people at the company have adopted kind of a similar setup. Are you using some of the same perspectives, tags and things like that, or do you just kind of give people your recommended best practices and just really let them run with it from there and come up with their own strategies and so forth?
Yeah, so definitely. Again, I don't know what's in the OmniFocus because I have no access to it. I know that everybody, I like to say that it is a tool, and it has a lot of structure to it, but it should fit the person, right? People should do it their way. They should do it the way that makes them happy. I certainly show them, my whole thing, and that's why I do this type of thing, is because I'm more than happy to show how I do it, and here's why I do it, and here's what works for me. But hey, if one big folder works for you, or if you want to tag things as differently, like that's fine, as long as it works for you. So I think when I train people, I train them and show them my system, and I, give them the way I do things and show them my perspectives. And again, we document a lot of this internally. So there's a lot of documentation where you can go and look how this is set up and this is set up. And we actually have a whole set of things that's like, here's a set of projects you should go build in your OmniFocus as an Arkus employee, right? There's a whole bunch of things that you should go build these as projects in your OmniFocus. Where you put them, I don't care. You could call your folder work, or call it Arkus, or call it, hell on earth. I don't know. So I think there's obviously a lot of similarity, but everybody gets to do their own thing. And so it's really just about best practices. It's a blank slate. They can put in whatever they want. The ones I've seen, when I look at them, they're similar. They have folders, they have stuff, they have perspectives, so zoom in on stuff. Most people are very tightly, use the big pieces like forecast view, like inbox and things like that.
And what can make OmniFocus a little daunting to get into it is it is essentially a blank slate to blank canvas. And so I think, having some structure, especially as people are getting into it, even if they end up changing it down the road, can be really helpful to just kind of reduce that initial friction and give them places to put things, and rather than everyone having to figure it out on their own.
I think if I were to talk to Ken again, one thing I think they've gone both ways. I've seen them start with OmniFocus, and they really gave you a blank slate. It's like you opened it up and like there was nothing there. And I think they got a lot of feedback. It's like, well, you can't see all the features of OmniFocus because they're so big, they're so buried. So then they kind of opened it up, and everything was they gave you all these projects, and there's all this stuff. And so then I think some people open it up, and then it's like almost too much, right? I'll throw in one of my hints. One of my hints is to customize, which is a very good customization you can do, but it's the, it's the columns. Like, you don't have to throw every single column in every single view. Like, you can see, for me, I only have these 4 columns. I don't really need to see other things. I certainly don't need to see when it's completed. I don't use the note functionality very much. Don't need the button. I don't use flag. So but if I added all these on, like my inbox, then that looks like more. It's a lot now. I see all this stuff. So one of the things I think that could help, when I train people on OmniFocus, is simplify it a little bit. Bring it back. Bring it back to its basics and with less on the screen, and start there. And then let's go, and you can add on all the powerful functionality, because it is extremely powerful, but in some ways it's a lot in your face when you first open it up. And it's like, well, I got 1,700 columns and all this stuff going on, and I don't get it. So it's like, that's why I always start people when I train them too, is just, I start here. I usually start with an empty inbox. And I'm like, okay, breathe, look, very simple, right? Not a lot on your screen. It's just this. See how simple it looks? Okay. And then I slowly move them through, because, it can be a little overwhelming to see sort of basically this database in front of you.
There's a question from Steve. He says, I wonder what Jason uses to store personal GTD reference information. Because I think you mentioned you're specifically storing notes in Evernote. Does that reference information live in Evernote as well, or would that go into G Suite, or does it really matter and depend on the context in terms of what type of information it is?
So I like in my, OmniFocus here, where I have my 2 perspectives, home and Arkus, I kind of do the same thing in reference. So if it's something for me, it's in Evernote. Evernote's for me. It's not for anybody else. I'm not sharing it. Maybe I'll share a recipe with my wife or something. You can share notes, but that's basically not what I'm using it for. I'm using it to capture lists and references and places I've been, and, ticket and movies I want to go see, and, my bet with my buddy on who's going to win the Super Bowl this year. I throw that all into Evernote. It's just a series of lists. It's personal. It's for me. And I don't build it in there to share it. So if it's not meant to be shared, then it's in Evernote. If it's something else, like for Arkus, then it's in G Suite, because it's a collaboration. I want other people to see it. So if it's a document, how to set up OmniFocus for the first time, that goes into G Suite. And so I'll put them in both. It really depends whether it's just for me or not. If it's just for me, it's in Evernote. If it's for the rest of the world, or for the company, well, if it's for the company, it goes into the company stuff. And then we can all share it and see it and capture it and look at it. So for my GTD stuff, it's probably in both, right? I have stuff that's in Google Docs, that tons of data and templates and how-to guides and stuff we've done, and workshops and recordings. And then if there's personal stuff that I like to keep, like my own horizons of focus or my own areas of responsibility, I'll throw those into Evernote, because they're only for me. And then my week review will make sure that I go through all of it, right? I make sure those are areas that I need to look at. So I'll look at in my week review, you'll see, I mean, I can pull it up, but it really is showing everything. It's showing, go look at docs, go look at Evernote, review your list here, because it's adaptive to me to make sure I look at all the areas.
I think one thing you point to that's very important is to really understand the purpose of each tool in the system, because there is overlap in terms of functionality. And once the purpose is really clear, like Evernote is for personal and Google Docs is for company-wide things and so forth, then it makes things so much easier to process and kind of avoids this decision fatigue of having to spend time dwelling on each item that comes in. I find for myself it becomes kind of automatic once those lines are clearly drawn. Okay, well, on that note, I want to thank you so much, Jason, for taking some time to share all of this with us today. And I definitely appreciate the minimalist approach to your system and all the thought you put into this, and definitely given me a few ideas to take away as well, some little tweaks to make to my own system. And I'm sure many other people here as well too. So thanks so much. And might have to have you back on. And then once OmniFocus 4 comes out, or maybe the collaboration. And I'm not saying there is an OmniFocus 4 coming anytime soon.
Well,
just to clarify that.
It's just how many years we're going to wait.
Yeah, exactly. But I'd be especially curious how you make use of the collaboration features and what impact that has, especially since everyone in the company is using it.
Yep, I can't wait for it to read anything on it. Again, all I know about it is it's coming sometime in the future.
Okay, fabulous. Well, thanks again, Jason. Thanks to everyone who joined us here live. Lots of great questions, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Take care.